In the previous video, we looked at accessing our cloud credentials through the Mythic C2 framework, specifically the Apollo payload here. And we downloaded / exfiltrated our AWS credentials through the Mythic C2. And then we went ahead and looked at the raw events. And what we need to do now is kind of craft a query of some kind that looks for this type of access. And that's exactly what is displayed on the screen here. So once again, we're looking at the 4663 event ID. So these are your SACL audit events. And again, we're just renaming a couple fields here. So we have, a good sense of what the fields are. So we have file path and base image. So file path will be the file that is being accessed, and base image is the process that is accessing the files. And then we just have a quick where statement here. And the logic here is we're looking for file path values. So in other words, we're looking at files that match our known locations of where our tokens are. So this section is for Azure, then our AWS credentials, followed by our gcloud, kubeconfig, and if you transform this query into your own SIM, you can add or remove values. If your particular organization doesn't use gcloud, then you can go ahead and take this out as an example. And then the second part of this where statement is excluding processes that in my environment access these kinds of tokens in a legitimate manner. So this excludes the actual Azure CLI. This excludes, Windows Defender scanning these files. This excludes the search protocol host from Windows. And this includes, bundled Python executables that go ahead and access these cloud credentials, as well as the kubectl executable itself. And we're also excluding events where the process is null. And then we're just simply displaying the values of the files and which process accessed the files. So in our results, we could see that the PowerShell process actually accessed all our cloud credentials, and that's because we ran that script earlier that created the tokens as well as added SACLs to them. So that's why we're seeing these events. We're also seeing our Explorer process accessing our credentials. That's probably when we were going ahead and browsing to it. And then I'll skip line 3 because that's actually our Apollo agent. And line 4 is showing you the PowerShell process. That's when we tested with the get content commandlet, where we actually took a look at the contents of these cloud credential files. And then line 3 is probably the most interesting. That is our Apollo agent, which we, not creatively named Apollo.exe. And we could see that it actually accessed our AWS credentials as well. So we get a good sense of what processes are accessing our cloud tokens through this kind of query. However, there is a slight curveball with the PowerShell process specifically, as when you go ahead and use a lot of these tools through something like Windows Terminal, and you open PowerShell and you go ahead and you do your cloud admin things through PowerShell, what you'll often see is that you'll see an event that actually looks like this. You'll see PowerShell accessing our credentials. And without additional context, line 4 here specifically, it's difficult to untangle whether this was malicious access or whether this was, an administrator doing their daily duties in the cloud, whatever they need to do. And that is kind of the next section that we'll look at. And we'll switch C2 frameworks for the next section a little bit, where we are going to be using the Metasploit PowerShell launcher. And in that next section, we'll look at how to untangle this line here and how to untangle malicious PowerShell access of cloud credentials from benign access from PowerShell to your cloud credentials. So we'll see everyone in the next video.